So one night, Richard Williams Bell was awakened by something pulling his hair so hard that he thought the top of his head was going to come off. He yelled in pain, and Betsy, who was upstairs one floor up from him, also began to scream, saying that something was pulling her hair as well. The Bells decided to ask the advice of their neighbors, and they went public with their dirty little secret. A friend named James Johnson came to the house. When the ghost made a sound like sucking air in through its teeth, an evil sound, he told it to be quiet, and it obeyed him. But poltergeists generally dislike being given orders, and they do much better if you ask them nicely. And so this one redoubled its persecution of Betsy. It started up even stronger. There would be a sharp slapping noise, and her cheek would go red from the blow, or her hair would be grabbed by an invisible hand and pulled. At least Johnson had discovered that the entity understood English, so he advised Bell to invite in more neighbors. At this stage, he still seemed to have entertained the obviously absurd idea that the children might be responsible. They tried sending Elizabeth to stay with a neighbor, and the disturbances in the Bell household stopped, but Elizabeth continued to be persecuted with blows and scratches, even at the neighbor's house. Poltergeist phenomenon always work their way up from small effects to larger ones, like starting with thumpings and tappings and knockings and scratchings on the wall, to things starting to move around, rocks flying, furniture flying, books flying, and eventually sometimes people being hit or voices. The Bell Witch seemed to take pleasure in developing new ways of upsetting everyone. Strange lights flitted about the yard after dark, and as the children came home from school, stones and chunks of wood were thrown at them. These were usually thrown from a particular thicket, and as usual in such cases, they never really hurt anyone. Instead, they just kind of glance off of your skin. And they found that if the kids threw the rocks back into this dense thicket, the rocks would come back at them again. It became almost as a game. And I heard somebody the other night on Coast to Coast AM, I believe it was, saying that he actually sat on someone's front porch in Africa, I believe, where they were being attacked with stones coming at them from some brush. And the man, the native man said, "Oh no, it's just the spirits throwing those at us." And the stones didn't hurt, but I mean, they were definitely having stones thrown at them. And so they would throw them back and the stones would come back. Well, at some point, Mr. Steiger marked the stone with a big black X and threw it. And the same stone with a big black X kept coming back at him. And he said it was late at night, pitch dark out there, no electricity, no electric lights. And if there was a human back there, they would not have been able to identify the one stone with an X on it. I thought that was interesting. But the visitors to the house received stinging slaps, as did the other children, if they tried to resist when the covers were being dragged off of them at night. That would piss me off. The next stage was a whistling sound, which gradually changed into a voice. Poltergeist voices do not sound at all like ordinary human voices, at least not to begin with. It seems as if the entity is having to master a strange medium to form sounds into words. Even the rapping noises are probably manufactured sounds, not genuine raps made by hard objects. Most talking ghosts and poltergeists begin in a guttural voice that sounds as if it is made up from grunts and groans. The Bell Witch made gasping, whispering noises more like an asthmatic's cough. Gradually, the voice developed until it was low but an audible whisper. And Betsy undoubtedly provided the energy for these demonstrations. She became fatigued and miserable, short of breath, and subject to fainting spells while this was going on. Whenever she was unconscious, the voice ceased, which led some neighbors to suspect that she was a ventriloquist. But, as it has been pointed out, it sounds much more as if she slipped into a mediumistic trance. At the same time, John Bell himself began to suffer. His tongue swelled and his jaw felt stiff, as if someone had pushed a stick inside his mouth, pushing on both sides of his jaw. It gradually became worse until he was often unable to eat for a day at a time. The witch also seemed to direct more and more of its malice towards old Jack Bell, as she called him, declaring that he would be tormented for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, the voice was graduated from a whisper to a normal voice. It used to repeat bits of sermons of various local parsons. Then it began using bad language, again, a common characteristic of talking ghosts. In fact, it talked in several voices. One of its earliest utterances in a normal voice was, quote, "I am a spirit who was once very happy but have been disturbed and am now unhappy." And it stated that it would torment John Bell and kill him in the end. It identified itself as an Indian whose bones had been scattered, then as a witch called Old Kate Batts, which the Bell Witch ghost is called Kate. It's generally referred to as Kate, and that's what the family called her. And actually, once a year, there is Kate Fest there in Adams, right? Is it Adams, Tennessee, I believe? And, but if I recall correctly, Kate Batts was actually a neighbor of theirs that John had had some dealings with. Something about he had purchased land from her, but didn't pay her fair value for it, or something like that. And some people theorize, and the movie suggested that it was actually her coming back to haunt them. But I heard recently that Kate Batt actually died sometime after all of this occurred, or certainly after it started, and some people think she put a hex on him. But it's generally believed now that the two really didn't have anything to do with each other. Poltergeists are pretty widely known to lie their asses off. Okay, so then 4 more voices made their appearances. The family of the witch. They identified themselves, or the many personalities of the witch. Some people think it was several spirits. They identified themselves as Black Dog, Mathematics, let's see if I can pronounce this, Hypocrisy, and Jerusalem. Black Dog had a harsh masculine voice. Jerusalem, a boy's voice, while the other 2 sounded delicate and feminine. They apparently indulged in debauches, talking drunkenly and filling the house with the smell of whiskey. As much as the witch detested John Bell, it seemed to have gentler feelings for the rest of the family, especially for John Bell's wife, Lucy. I've read other places that the witch would actually sing in this angelic, amazingly beautiful angelic voice, would sing to Lucy, loved her, worshipped her, praised her, said nothing but kind things about her, would have done anything for Lucy Bell, but wanted to kill John, and really didn't like Betsy either. When she fell ill, the witch lamented, "Poor Luce, poor Luce," and showered hazelnuts on her, which was one of the things that Lucy Bell loved the most, was hazelnuts. She also loved bananas, but they were very, very hard to come by in that era, in that part of the country. It was a delicacy, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute.